joined in the studio by the journalist Justin Cohen from the Jewish News. A very good morning to you, Justin.
Hello.
The collapse of this truce, it is a setback, but in your opinion, does it also represent a terminal blow, or is there still some hope of salvaging something?
I think there's absolutely hope that, unfortunately, with an intractable conflict like we have between Israel and the Palestinians, you have to maintain hope. And I think Tony Blair was speaking yesterday about the need for compromise. The fact is that Hamas yesterday refused to accept this ceasefire. They are going to have to move to compromise in order to achieve that ceasefire. Some of their goals that they've set out are just simply not going to be met. Likewise,
easing the blockade, for example, will that not be met at all?
Well, I think actually under the terms of the ceasefire brought forward by Egypt, there was talk about easing restrictions, opening up the borders, the Rafah crossing. Egypt themselves are involved in needing to open up that crossing. So I think that there is potential for that, and in the long term, that will be part of negotiations. But firing rockets indiscriminately on Israeli civilians isn't going to achieve anything.
But in fairness to Hamas, they said, look, we rejected this interim arrangement that was put in place because we weren't actually consulted. We heard about it via second and third persons or sources. So is it really reasonable to expect them to sign up to something where they hadn't been directly approached?
Well, first of all, you have to forgive me if I don't necessarily take everything that Hamas said at their word. This is a terrorist group, recognised as a terrorist group by the international community.
But there's still viable players on this, given that the conflict is between them and Israel, so they will have to be consulted, whether we like it or not.
They will have to be consulted, and they are party to this conflict. They're the ones who are responsible for firing those rockets. If they weren't consulted, I would be surprised, but certainly the Palestinian Authority, led by Mahmoud Abbas, was consulted, and they agreed to this ceasefire.
But he doesn't have the authority to speak on behalf of Hamas, surely?
Well, again, there's a question mark there, because we recently had the reconciliation pact between Hamas and Fatah, and actually Abbas is supposed to lead a unity government now between those two organisations. So I would have thought that if he was being consulted and was involved, that there is an element to the Palestinians, being involved in those negotiations.
But when we talk about finding some way forward using the diplomatic initiative, it does raise the question about who is credible in this drama to lead the way, because once upon a time it was the Egyptians who were in the driving seat, but given that they have pretty much crushed the Muslim Brotherhood at home, and the Muslim Brotherhood is politically tied to Hamas, who else is out there who could actually fill that void, so to speak?
I think that you're right. 2 years ago, when we achieved a ceasefire, when we were last at this point, it was Egypt under the Muslim Brotherhood that managed to achieve that. I think, though, that the fact that the international community at the moment are refusing to negotiate with Hamas, that's always been the case. That's the policy towards a terrorist group. That does make it very difficult, but I think Hamas is very clear about what it needs to do. It just needs to stop firing rockets, stop needing to terrorise the Israeli people in order that the shelling from Israel stops. I think the equation is very clear, and eventually we will come to that ceasefire, whether it be today, tomorrow, or in another week, if Hamas refuse to stop firing those rockets.
Right, but very briefly, en route to reaching that point, like it or not, the rockets will be fired, there will be a response. How far do you think Prime Minister Netanyahu is prepared to go, bearing in mind that we've lost around 200 or so Palestinian lives have been lost. One Israeli life has been lost so far, but that death toll on both sides could rise.
Tragically, it could, and I think that every death on civilian death on both sides should be mourned. Netanyahu, so far, I would say, has shown an element of restraint. He's known as a bit of a bull in the china shop generally, but many people expected him, including within his own cabinet, to go into Gaza to launch a ground offensive. He's stopped clear of that, and I think it's very important he continues to do so, because if Israel then goes into Gaza, the situation could get a whole lot worse. I just hope that both parties are able to find a way towards a ceasefire, and that doesn't take very much longer.
A view shared by all of us here. But Justin Cohen, thank you so much for coming in and providing us with your analysis of that situation. Thank you.